Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to give it a moment because we're just watching people coming into the room and the numbers going up as we start. So I'm just going to give it 10 more seconds while people get in here so they don't miss anything. Right, good afternoon, everybody. Hi, and welcome to the next in the series of the Deepcrawl webinars. My name is Jon Myers from Ascending Media, and I will be your host today, as always. And I have a great subject for you guys today and a great presenter too. So today we'll be talking about building an SEO strategy from the ground up with Sophie Brannon, who's the Client Services Director of Absolute Digital Media. It's a real pleasure to have you here, Sophie, and thank you for taking the time on such a hot day to be with us here at Deepcrawl.
Yeah, no problem at all. It was great to be here. I'm really excited to get started and talking about the subject.
So am I, without a doubt. So for all of you guys that have been on these webinars with us before, we're going to follow the usual format, but just in case you haven't, it's just your first time coming in, and hopefully you'll come back again once you've seen the great things that we do on the webinar front. We're going to present for around about 25 minutes of presentation, and then it'll be followed up with obviously the usual question and answers, because we love to get your opinions and your thoughts, and I'll give you the opportunity to ask Sophie about what she presents over the next sort of 25 minutes. So please don't wait till the end to submit your questions. As you will see at the bottom of the screen, we have a Q&A box. And if you could, anything as she's going through the contents, if you want to throw that into the Q&A box, I will pick that up as we go on, and I'll start to stitch the questions together ready for the Q&A at the end of the session. So that will happen about 25 minutes into this. As always, this session is recorded, and there will be a full write-up and a link to the recording on the Deepcrawl blog, and obviously the shares will be, the slides will be shared as well. And that'll probably be coming out early next week to you guys, so you can go back through this content, take it into the office and distill everything around what we're going to talk about. Please do take the time to feedback. As you see when you sign out today, there'll be a little box to pop up and just ask you, hey, what do you think? You know, we're very keen to understand what you think of what we do and how we put these webinars together. Is there anybody you'd like to see on these types of webinars? Is there any subjects that you would like us to cover? Let us know that, and obviously tell us how a great job that Sophie did today. No pressure now, Sophie. Obviously, I just said you've done a great job.
I know, look at that. Look at the pressure.
But I'm sure she will. The content looks great. I've had a look through the deck already, and I'm actually looking forward to this. So this is obviously such a key part of SEO success. I mean, I've been an SEO for many years as well, and I understand that you live and die by getting your strategy right. Get your strategy wrong, anything that you do there afterwards is not going to have the actual impact that you want it to have from an SEO point of view. So this is an incredibly important part of the topic of SEO, and I'm sure Sophie's going to say some amazing nuggets for you today as well. I'm really looking forward to this one. As I say, have seen this content, and I think it looks great that Sophie's pulled together for us. So without further ado, I'm going to mention it again and say, please get those questions ready. Please jump in the chat box, get involved, but bang those questions into that Q&A box. So without further ado, I'd love to hand over to Sophie Brannon of Absolute Digital, that is going to talk to us about building an SEO strategy from the ground up. So over to you, Sophie, and I'll give you the driving seat for the next 25 minutes.
Amazing, thank you. So yeah, as Jon introduced, I'm going to be talking a lot about building an SEO strategy from the ground up and how to get started. So this webinar is going to be all about really the framework and things and steps that you can follow to really make sure that you've put everything in place that is going to build an SEO strategy that you can continue to build upon on an ongoing basis. But even just to get started with, even if it's a small campaign, a large campaign, big budgets, no matter the size or the industry, it's going to be able to be relevant to everything. So we're going to be talking about a couple of different things. So the first one is about what to know before you even start tackling audits on a website. So one of the things I notice a lot is that people will just go headfirst into technical audits or content audits, but it's everything you need to know before you even look at a site. Then we're going to be diving into the audience funnel, looking at some competitors and competitor analysis, and then how to prioritize an ongoing evaluation after that point as well. So often when it comes to SEO strategy, and I've had this question before whenever I'm looking at a website for the first time, and this is relevant to whether you're working agency side and you've got a number of clients that you're working on, or whether you're in-house, brand new, or you're just starting a new project, freelancing. Often you'll sit there when it comes to a brand new SEO strategy and go, where do I start? And a lot of the times, most people will just start running the websites through a lot of crawlers or running it through a number of different tools, or just kind of having you click around and looking around the site. But there's a number of things you need to consider before you even look at the website first of all. So for me, the first place I start with any kind of SEO strategy is looking at those core business objectives, knowing exactly what you want to achieve out of a campaign, out of any SEO campaign, and not just what you want to achieve, but what the stakeholders want to achieve as well. So that could be your clients, that could be your boss if you're working in-house, or your marketing managers. That could be anyone who is you're kind of reporting into when it comes to your SEO strategy and the SEO results. So those core business objectives can change depending on the type of website it is, depending on the industry, depending on the overall kind of aim of the business, not just online, but also generally as well. So that could be increased online visibility, so ranking for more keywords. It could be increased organic traffic, which is pretty standard across most of all of the different types of industries and all of the different types of websites, whether that's e-com or lead gen. Increase inquiries or revenue or transactions. It could be a mixture of all of these. It could be a number. It could be someone saying, I want to increase organic traffic by 20% in the next 6 months or 12 months. But before you even look at the website, you really need to know what those business objectives are, because that will help to shape the strategy and the direction of your strategy as well. And it's really important to never just assume what those are or what those objectives are going to be. And I'll give you a really good example of this. And this is a campaign that I've worked really closely on over the past 4 or 5 years now. Denji are a horse feed client. So they sell horse feed, they supply horse feed, they manufacture horse feed, and they are an e-commerce website. And as an e-commerce website, it's very quick and easy to assume that their core business objective will be to increase their transactions and their revenue across their website, because they're e-com. Why wouldn't they want to do that? Actually, that wasn't the case with these guys, because they had a lot of internal issues when it came to their suppliers and making sure that they weren't upsetting the retailers and people that they were kind of extending their horse feed out to outside of their e-com business. So actually, their main objectives for their SEO campaign was their branding. It was all about how can we increase our visibility from an educational perspective? How can we rank for more key terms around the different types of course conditions that feed and nutrition can really impact, like laminitis and gastric ulcers and all sorts of things like that. They were not interested at all in the transactions and the revenue. And if I didn't know that before I started, when it came to kind of forming that SEO strategy, I could have ended up working across a whole, right, let's drive loads of traffic to the products, let's drive traffic to the categories, let's really push on these transactions and this revenue. But they didn't want that at all. And if I actually went down that route, we probably could have upset them and caused a lot of harm to their business in the long term, realistically, because their suppliers would have been a bit pissed off about it. And that's fine. So really making sure you understand those business objectives and understanding what people want from their SEO is important, because at the end of the day, not all transactions are valuable for every single client. You really need to understand what that is before you even get started with the website. Ask that question. What does success mean to you? And that's the most important thing that you can ask any client, any stakeholder before you even get started with your strategy. What does success look like? And then you can really build your strategy around that. Then the next thing I like to look at is my target market. Because again, if you know your audience, if you really understand the profiles, the visual personas, the people who you're looking to target and to turn to you for solutions, you're going to know what kind of direction generally you want to take the SEO strategy in. So that could be in terms of your content, that can be in terms of any kind of digital PR perhaps that maybe you're looking to go towards. That could be if you're looking at even PPC, obviously we're talking SEO strategy, but they can work really closely in line with each other. You can really closely target those people with your strategy. But if you don't know who you're trying to cater to, then you're not necessarily going to know where to go with that strategy. And then we need to look at the audience funnel all as part of that. So we all know, well, a lot of us know that the audience funnel currently is split into kind of the awareness stages, the interest stages, desire, action, looking at all of these different areas. But actually the audience funnel has extended quite significantly from that. Now we've got awareness, we've got interest, consideration, evaluation, action, engagement, loyalty. We need to be targeting all of these different areas of this audience funnel, because it's going to be highly competitive to target bottom of the funnel depending on the industry you're in. So that industry could be perhaps, let's talk finance, for example. If you're looking to rank for the term loans, that's super competitive. You've got all sorts of types of businesses looking to target that. So maybe we need to look at actually targeting more of the top of the funnel, people who are not really sure what they're looking for yet. On top of this, people are looking and researching more and finding all different types of information, comparing, looking at reviews. There's much more touch points in the audience funnel now, more than ever. And the more we use technology and the more technology really evolves, that's only going to keep extending. So we really need to be aware of this audience funnel and how we're going to strategize around not just where we want to end up. So if it's loans, top of page 1 for loans, if we're going to really strip it back like that, but how we're going to really drive and nurture that traffic on an ongoing basis to meet those business objectives that we identified in the first step. Now, an average B2B buyer's journey, according to a study by Focus Vision, and this was back in 2020, so this could have evolved even more since then, is actually involving 13 pieces of content. Now, that's not necessarily just content that's on their website, but that could be reviews, that could be looking at their competitors, that can be doing different types of comparison. That's every single stage of the kind of funnel before they even get to a point where they're near converting. 13 pieces of content. So you're really you need to make sure that you are everywhere in that funnel to make sure that you're able to be in front of the right people at the right time in the right stage of their journey. And that should really form a part of that SEO strategy and a big part of that too. Because you need to really consider all of those touch points in that journey. From the point of when they're trying to understand what it is they've got a problem with, all the way through. When looking at B2B, but also looking at e-commerce as well, generally you can narrow those steps down. Now, the funnel is quite an extensive one, as we just saw in a few slides earlier, but we can pinpoint that into a few different areas, and you can build your SEO strategy around that. So understanding the problem, this is where people are at. They know they have a problem, but they're just not quite sure what to do with it. So your SEO strategy should also understand that problem or help them to understand that problem and what those solutions are, and give them a bit more insight, even if they're not 100% sure what that problem is. And then they're going to start looking for vendors once they've understood that problem and they know what they need. So who's the best solution for them? And then they're going to go through that kind of comparison stage. They're going to start comparing you to your competitors. So you really need to pinpoint as part of your SEO strategy, as part of your content, that you are the best solution for them. And you need to make sure that you have all of that factored in. So that could be comparison articles, that can just be pushing your USPs, that could be making sure that generally you're more visible on search results than what your competitors are. This is all a part of your SEO strategy. And then they're going to shortlist, they're going to look at reviews. Obviously your EAT, so your expertise, authority, trustworthiness is going to play a really big part of that. So your About Us page, your reviews, making sure you've got your accreditation shown. That doesn't just help Google to understand and kind of Google search raters to understand how important and authoritative your website is. That's going to help your customer base too. And then they're going to make that final decision. So you really need to pinpoint and narrow that strategy down into what's going to push them over the line, what's going to help them to convert. And your whole SEO strategy should be really trying to pinpoint each of these steps. 70% of buyers will fully define their needs before engaging with the seller. So before they even get to anywhere near the middle of the funnel, they already kind of understand what they're looking for. So you really need to be pushing all of those different points afterwards. How you're different, why you're better than your competitors. Are you more visible than your competitors? Because you could be way better. You could have better price points. You could have a better solution. But if you're not visible for the terms that your customers are potentially searching for, then they're not going to find you. So it's really important that you are there and everywhere as part of that entire funnel process. Now we're talking a little bit about competitors there. And one thing I really like to say as a huge caveat is that copying your competitors is not a good strategy, but you can find the gaps and that can be a really helpful part of your strategy overall. So let's talk a little bit about those competitor gaps. Are your competitors capturing areas of the market that you want to appear in? And if so, how are you identifying that? Making sure you're able to identify that through kind of content gap analysis and different kind of aspects like that will really help you to not just encroach into their market, but also find everywhere else that your competitors are kind of not quite into yet that you can really push. And this is a really good example. So SEMrush have a really great keyword gap tool, and there are a number of other tools out there as well that can allow you to really discover how your market can find you instead. So you can look at keyword overlaps. what your competitors are ranking for that maybe you're not ranking for yet, but then also really identifying and pinpointing that into opportunities that maybe you're weak on, or maybe you're really strong on, but you just need to push that a little bit further because you're maybe not quite where you want to be. Really understanding that across the entire network of keywords and across all of your competitors will allow you to encroach into that market space. And we're talking a lot about content, but links. We all know it's an important part of SEO. Are your competitors gaining links from publications that you want to see your brand in? But don't just rely on the tools. And this is something I am very passionate about because I see SEOs across the globe just running their kind of clients' websites, their competitors through a bunch of tools and just using that. Looking directly in the search results can help you to find those hidden gems that maybe the tools are missing. And that is not necessarily because the tools are doing anything wrong, but maybe your competitors just aren't quite ranking or targeting keywords, but they're producing really good content, or they're doing really well from kind of a citation perspective. They're not showing up in backlink profiles because they're citations. They're showing up in maybe great publications from a digital PR perspective. Really looking and honing down on your competitors and what those kind of terms are that you want to be visible for, but also just searching and seeing what the search results are kind of saying. We talk a lot about search intent in SEO, and it's kind of one of the biggest buzzwords that people have been talking about in kind of the last 12 months or so. Search intent isn't necessarily what searchers are really looking for, but it's Google's understanding of what people are looking for. So that could be completely different to what it is you think people are looking for. So it's just important to make sure you're just cross-referencing those search results for the things you're trying to rank for. And this is something I did quite recently, actually, and it was for a client who deal with customer service outsourcing. Fantastic client, huge brand, really want to be visible for terms around those peak times and those peak calls. So making sure that they're kind of available for brands who are looking for extra customer service support when it's their busy periods, so say around Christmas time, and they're getting more phone calls. But when you actually search for peak time calls or peak time management, electricity businesses show, because apparently that's a thing in electricity. Who knew? I didn't know that until I was doing all my keyword research. And I was like, great, this has got some good search volumes. Let's do this. Oh, there's a bunch of electricity companies ranking for this. If you don't look in search results, you could be kind of chasing a bit of a dead horse. So you really need to be looking at that and not just looking at the tools themselves and what they show up. Now, the next thing to look at, and again, we're not even at the site yet, but we're looking at industry niches. We're looking at how important that is for an SEO strategy, understanding what your industry has to do with really forming and structuring and directing that SEO strategy. Now, one thing I really like to say, and talking about industry niches, is that you can have, especially if you're agency side or if you're working on very similar brands as freelance or maybe even in-house, that a blanket approach doesn't work. Even if you have very similar types of clients, or you've got very similar websites, you work in exactly the same niche, exactly the same kind of target audience, got exactly the same kind of business objectives, because it happens, like we haven't necessarily identified anything new here, a blanket approach isn't necessarily going to work, because each of those websites are going to have different things that you need to consider. Now, a bit of an example about this. So one of the areas that I work quite closely in is e-commerce, and particularly CBD. It's one of the newest industries. It's coming up and kind of hitting it quite hard, with lots of search volumes behind it. So we get quite a lot of business from that. One of those websites that we're looking at, and we have a few on board at the moment, is an e-commerce website selling different types of CBD oils, different types of CBD sprays, all different types of products like this. And for one website, a strategy that really helped for us was creative digital PR and really strong technical SEO. And this was built on exactly the same platform at pretty much the same time as one of our other e-commerce CBD clients. But actually, that didn't work so much. And what really worked for these guys was content around kind of the sciences and building that trust, that expertise. And the reason for that, even though the websites were kind of built around the same time and the platform's the same, so it's the same CMS, they all had different kind of technical health. The technical health of the website was different. The types of content that was already existing on the website before they came to us was different. The kind of link velocity that they had was different. not every website's going to be the same, and you can benchmark things even if they're exactly the same industry. But if you're not 100%, everything is 100% the same thing, you're going to need to change your SEO strategy. So certain things can work in the same industry. So I work in finance. I know that good quality content, EAT, obviously it's YMYL, throwing all the acronyms at you now. All of those different things work really, really well together, and really pushing on that can form that strategy. But there's always going to be different things that you need to consider for every website individually. And that's where kind of the audit process comes in. So just making sure that your industry isn't just kind of blanket approached. Now, covering the basics will always be important in SEO strategy. Now, this is something that I am, again, very passionate about, because people tend to forget the basics and they tend to kind of run away with the next big trend in SEO. And that can be after the 2018 Medic update, that could be EAT. People running after EAT and they're like, right, I've got some content, I've got some links, like, cool, that's not important anymore. I need to have good EAT. Yeah, you do, but your content's not that good either. Or it could be Python. Python was huge, like kind of 2020, 2021, everyone was in lockdown. People were learning about Python SEO. Awesome, that's great. But your content and your links, so you're forgetting the basics, the main kind of things that really form your SEO strategy. Don't get carried away, because the basics will always be an important part of an SEO strategy, always. Now, when I'm talking about the basics, what am I talking about? So the first thing for me when I approach what I refer to as the basics of SEO is keyword mapping. So keyword mapping is essentially when you are matching specific keywords or types of keywords to the URLs on your website. So really understanding exactly where you should be pinpointing certain terms and what kind of content you should be writing about on each of your individual pages. And that can really help to structure your overall content strategy. It can help you to understand your priorities. So for example, looking at if it's search volume, competition, if you look at kind of CPC, typically that's using PPC, but if you're looking at it from more of a competition perspective, some SEOs do like to use that as a metric. It can really help to prioritize what pages you're going to write first and what you're going to be targeting. So keyword mapping is really important there, and it's all part of that keyword research process. It can also help you to target specific audience types. So just going straight back to those funnels that I was talking about earlier, if you can really pinpoint types of content around specific audience types, you're going to cover that funnel and really help to nurture people on an ongoing basis. It can help you to avoid content cannibalization as well. And this is a really big sin in the SEO world. And people might be seeing this a lot more, particularly when Google's introduced these things like the indented search results and multiple URLs are starting to rank and things like that. Normally that's because Google isn't quite sure what page to rank for a particular term, because content's too similar or it's kind of referencing the same kind of terms, and Google's kind of getting a bit confused, and it's not always going to be ranking potentially two in the search results. It might just be like, you know what, I don't know what to rank, so I'm not going to rank any of them. So if you've got a real clear keyword mapping process, then you're going to be able to avoid that content cannibalization issue as well. It can also help to provide transparency to gain buy-in. So a lot of the time with SEO, the most kind of tangible thing that clients and kind of stakeholders get is reporting. So it's important to really show to them what you're trying to do and the processes you're trying to go through. And a keyword mapping file can help to provide that transparency to say, hey, Mr. Stakeholder, these are the URLs we're targeting because we want to gain and achieve X, Y, and Z business objectives that we identified in step 1. We want to target X, Y, and Z audience. And this is how we're going to do it. And these are the keywords we're going to target and potentially rank for, because that's the whole point of SEO. Obviously, we've moved a long way from just being, I want to be position 1 for this keyword. And honestly, if clients come to me and say that's what they want, I'm like, whoa, let's rein that back in, because that's not the point of SEO. It's all about those kind of bigger business objectives. It's the traffic, the visibility, the main kind of end goal for that. But you can help to provide that transparency and gain that buy-in for people who maybe don't have that kind of level of understanding of SEO as what kind of we do, and many SEOs do moving forward. And really, it can help you to get that sign off on what you want to do too. So if you understand the funnel and you understand the competitors that you're kind of trying to go up against, what they're doing, where they are in the market, where those gaps are in the market, and how you can really encroach in that. and then you can kind of build those and achieve those objectives alongside all of these things, that can really help you with your keyword mapping process. And your keyword mapping can ultimately help your strategy targeting overall. It should really be a core component of that strategy. But then what about technical health? So we've obviously only just really got started on even looking at the website at this point. We've kind of looked at overall competitors, we've looked at the market space, we've looked at the audience, we've looked generally at what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve with those objectives. You've looked at a few keywords you want to target, you've keyword mapped that out, but what about technical health? Like, we know there's 3 pillars of SEO. You've got your content, you've got your technical, and you've got your link building, and everything else kind of revolves around that as well. Auditing your technical health can really help you with your overall priorities. It can really help you to understand and benchmark where your website is at, where it's at against your competitors, but just generally where it's at in terms of what Google can see too, and what your users can see and what they're interacting with. Because ultimately, if Google can't crawl and index the website, then what's the point? You can have the best content out of all of your competitors. You can have the most in-depth guides. You can have the best link profile. You can be getting placements from across the globe in some of the highest DA or highest DR, whatever you use as a metric, kind of publications. You can be everywhere and doing everything, but your organic traffic's not going to improve because Google can't rank you. It can't crawl and it can't index the website. Sure, you can be getting some referral traffic and some direct traffic, and your brand visibility can be out there, and you can be using social media for that too. But if you're really going and focusing on an SEO strategy and you want to improve your organic visibility or your organic traffic or organic revenue, transactions, forms, lead gen objectives, whatever it is you want to be doing, if your technical health isn't right, then Google's not even going to be able to get to the nitty-gritty of all of the rest of the strategy you've put together. So prioritizing that technical health and running those technical audits first off, once you've understood kind of everything that you're trying to achieve in your SEO strategy, will help you with that priority. And now a technical audit can include a number of different things, but when I'm looking at technical, I'm looking at accessibility, I'm looking at crawlability. Can Google crawl and index the site? The architecture of the website. Can you navigate through? Can you find the most important pieces of content? Have you got a bunch of pages that are kind of just hidden on the website that you will never find, but actually they're your most valuable pages? Can Google get to them? More importantly, can your users get to them? They're the people you're trying to impress. If you're not impressing your kind of users, then Google's kind of second to that. You're looking at your pagination, looking at different elements like your header tags, your page titles, looking at the rendering. How fast is your site? The page experience. Is your user experience good? Are you passing or failing your core web vitals? What are you doing with all of these different elements from a technical perspective? Structured data. Structured data, and again, this is something that is a big pain point for me, isn't just about those rich results, and they're great, don't get me wrong. I love a bit of FAQ schema, or I love reviews, and I love really making sure that you've got those nice extra space in search results, because that's what we want. We want to be bigger than our competitors. We want people to click on us more. But it's also about understanding the entities and that connection between different websites too. And then, as I said, indexing. If Google can't index, then what's the point? And running your technical audits is a really important part of that. And Deepcrawl is obviously one of the best tools out there to do that. It has a whole indexation overview dashboard. It breaks everything down super clearly, everything from the indexing and those kind of main issues, all the way through to configuration, structured data, looking at your mobile user experience, everything in between. Making sure you have a reliable tool to really pull that through, and maybe use one, maybe use a few, do your comparisons, use Google. Search Console is obviously a great thing. That's information coming straight from the horse's mouth. A lot of the time you can API it into these types of tools. Using all of this will really help to understand what's really wrong from a technical perspective, but then what you can actually fix and what you can't. And that's the important thing, is to take a step back and prioritize. Prioritizing and understanding what is going to be the highest impact out of that technical audit and what's going to be the lowest effort. And that's probably where your quick wins are going to be. So a technical audit, and one of, again, the biggest sins, you'll see it across Twitter, you'll see it across any kind of SEO, really any SEOs, having technical audits run that have 100-page decks or hundreds and hundreds of slides or whatever it is. but most of the issues are either not resolvable, don't actually matter, and they're just kind of flagging in a tool because the tool's like, yeah, like this is a problem, but you know, from a functionality perspective, like it's important and you need to keep it. Or maybe it's picking up subdomains that actually, like, they're no index. That's cool. We don't need to add viewports onto that. There's all of these different things that you need to understand to then prioritize that. And if you're prioritizing the things that are high impact, they're going to have the biggest impact and move the needle the most, but are kind of the lowest effort, because don't forget with SEO, it's a long-term game. But if you're having to deal with development teams, or you're having to pass tickets on to your clients that you know is just going to get pushed to the back of the queue, and you're going to have to navigate that as a whole other process. And there are plenty of talks around about how you can do that. It is a big hot topic in SEO. Really understanding what you can then actually viably kind of implement should be your top priority, because that's where your low-hanging fruit really is. See the bigger picture. What's really vital? What's really going to move that needle, and how you can do that? How do these technical changes fit within the wider business strategy as well? So this is something that I face on a day-to-day basis, and will typically come up with a lot of big brands and a lot of corporate companies. They will often have a wider business strategy, and it doesn't always align with what you want to do from an SEO perspective. So for example, your technical changes that you want to implement could be, the navigation sucks, like it really sucks. We really need to change this, like the information architecture is not good. We really need to make sure that we're kind of improving that user experience, that user flow, because that's going to help with the kind of end game of achieving those SEO objectives. But you know, the business strategy might not be evolving around that. It might be looking at something almost the opposite. And it's like, no, we've got this navigation because we want to be achieving X, Y, and Z. That's outside of those objectives that you want to hit. So you really need to be making sure that you're aligning, not just with your stakeholders, but also with other departments as well, to make sure what you're proposing and what you're trying to get buy-in for, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what we're trying to do, is get that buy-in. It's going to fit within kind of the wider business strategy as well. And what can you actually implement? So this is something that realistically is one of the biggest sticking points. Again, you might not actually be able to change it. You might not have access to a development team. You might not be able to do any of these things. So understanding where those things sit within the bigger picture is an important part of it. And then there's links. So your link acquisition strategy will be heavily influenced by budget. Now, this is really important to remember, because you may go off in your kind of SEO strategy and your plan, but ultimately you're not going to be able to do a lot of these things. So you could be looking at data-driven campaigns, FOI requests, reactives and news tracking, content campaigns, expert commentary, blogger outreach, perhaps, if that's the direction you want to go in. Just make sure that that's aligning with the budget you've got, because it's all well and good saying, I want to be doing all of these links and I want to be building all of this great campaign, but oh, I only have $1,000 a month and that kind of time to spend on this campaign. I don't have 30 grand or 50 grand or whatever it is, and all of this time, a month's worth of time to actually spend on it. So let's really make sure that you're aligning that process too, not just with what you want to do, but with the budget and the wider strategy. And the final steps out of all of this, prioritization. If you know the impact and the effort and the viability of what you want to do, use that as a structure to prioritize all of these things. So prioritizing what content you're going to create first as part of the keyword mapping, prioritizing what you're going to be doing from a technical perspective, what's actually viable, what's going to have the highest impact, what's going to have the lowest effort, where are your quick wins. Know what you can and can't do logistically. So again, just covering that whole point of, is it actually possible to implement? Does the CMS, which you may have to have external conversations about this, but does the CMS actually allow you to do it? Will your developers actually implement it? Does it fit within that wider strategy? Know how many ears you need to bend to. So again, just looking at that, getting the buy-in perspective, know who you need to talk to, who you need to target. Is that your stakeholders? Is that your developers? How can you split your SEO strategy that's going to please everyone? And it's not that easy, and it's not possible in most circumstances, because we all like to have a row with a development team or a wider business kind of team, but really making sure that you're kind of putting forward your case as to why you want to be doing that all needs to be part of your priorities as well. And SEO could be an afterthought for the brand you're working on as well. So just really making sure that you understand that from an overall business perspective, SEO is not always going to be the first port of call. And you might want to make a bunch of changes to content or to kind of the main navigation or to the way the website flows or the way the website even looks. But you need to make sure that fits in with the wider team too. And best practice for SEO won't always resonate with the client. So understanding from that perspective that we need to find that balance between the brand and the SEO as well. And then the ongoing evaluation. So SEO strategy should never be a one-time process. New competitors can enter the market. Competitors might start investing more in their SEO. Google could shake things up, and we've had plenty of them recently, plenty of algorithm updates, big fraud calls, fires at data centers, which has happened in the last few days that's apparently caused algorithm volatility. Then it's come out that it hasn't. We don't really know. Google can shake things up, and we've seen clients shoot up, we've seen them drop, we've seen them stagnate. You need to make sure that that's kind of something that you take into consideration. Your business objectives can change. So again, going back to that original example that I gave about Denji, they could be not targeting e-commerce right now, but in the future, that could completely change. They could be like, right, we've got our brand visibility up there. We don't care about our suppliers anymore. We don't care about our retailers. Great, let's really push on the e-commerce side. Your SEO strategy might need to evolve with that. It can never just be something that's set in stone. Results might not come as expected. So this is something that we need to take into consideration a lot of the time, because SEO isn't always straightforward and all of these different things can happen, and we can set our benchmarks and set our projections, but it's not necessarily always going to be the right kind of way to go forward. We won't know until we start implementing these things. So just making sure your strategy evolves around that too, and understanding what those results are and how you're going to improve on them on a bit of an ongoing basis can help with that strategy evolution. And continually pivoting your focus based on performance, market changes, and new opportunities is going to be a key part of your strategy moving forward. So the key takeaways from this webinar: if you understand the business objectives, you understand the niche, you understand the resource, you understand the viability of what you want to do, that's your strategy. But don't forget to make sure your strategy evolves with the business.
Amazing. Thank you, Sophie. Really great content. And I hope you guys that have been on have really enjoyed that. I mean, it's we're a little bit over the 25, which is fine, because I think the content there is fantastic. And I've got loads of great questions as well. So thank you, everybody that's been dropping in the questions as Sophie's been talking along. So I'm going to jump into those, because obviously we like to make sure you get the most out of everything that you're asking. I say that as the questions start to go up even more now. So we've got loads of questions. I'm going to pre-caveat this already. I've got 3 new questions in the time I said that. If we don't get around to your question today, what we will do is we'll get the answers to those questions and we'll make them part of the write-up as well. So everybody will get an answer to everything that they say. But going right back to the start of what you talked about, Sophie, and talking about obviously setting the objectives of the strategy. A couple of people have asked, what do you do if you don't know what the objective is? So, you will go into businesses and you will go into brands, and I've experienced this myself, and I think you mentioned as well, sometimes they just don't know what they want. So where would be your starting point for an objective for a client that goes, well, hey, I don't know if it's brand or awareness or conversion or whatever it might be. Where do you tend to start to kind of get to that point of setting some key KPIs and objectives?
So where I start typically is just having a really open and honest conversation with the client. It's a lot of the time they don't know where to start with their SEO objectives, because they don't really understand SEO and they don't understand what they're going to get from it. They just know that it's important. Like a lot of businesses and a lot of brands will turn around and be like, I know I need to do SEO. I don't really know why, but SEO is great because someone told me it was. So just having that really open and honest conversation, because they know what they want to achieve from that overall business, right? So let's just tailor that to your SEO strategy as well. And again, that evolution. So it's more about, okay, this isn't necessarily working. I don't understand what I'm getting from this. Cool. So let's really focus on transactions or revenue or form fills, or it might not necessarily be focused around organic visibility or organic traffic. But at the end of the day, businesses want to make money. So that's probably the best place to start.
No, I couldn't agree more. At the end of the day, they're paying for SEO services. So at the end of the day, if you pay money out, you want to get money back in a lot of
Exactly. ROI. ROI is always the big one.
Simple as that. So you also talked a little about one of our attendees. It's an anonymous one, has asked the question, but they're just wondering, could you elaborate a little bit more on what is digital PR, versus sort of traditional PR? I know that some people kind of wonder what that is in some respects, but it would be good to get your view, Sophie, on the difference between digital to traditional.
Definitely, yeah. So traditional PR, and the way I see traditional PR, is more about getting placements in kind of print and also like TV, things like that. So it's more around kind of editorials. It's more around, as I say, getting articles in newspapers, magazines, things like that, sending press releases, more around the business itself. So we've had new hires, we've had a bunch of awards, accreditations, and really pushing those aspects. When I'm talking about digital PR, I'm talking more about getting your brands in kind of different publications, but online rather than in kind of print. And typically it's a lot more creative as well. So we can be talking about kind of hopping on some of the latest news, the breaking news. We could be kind of jumping on things maybe about the Royals, talking about interior design trends of 2022, anything that's relevant to your business, and getting you out there from more of a digital perspective, so on digital platforms, online. And what we'd be looking to gain from that is not just kind of brand mentions and brand visibility, but it's links back to your website as well. So helping with that kind of backlink strategy too.
No, definitely, which makes a huge amount of sense now. I think when I think about that sort of side of things, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. So again, when you think back to the start, you talked a little bit about obviously keyword strategies and content and the 3 pillars, obviously, which are, I think are a great way of looking at it, content and technical and links. I mean, that's the success of any key SEO campaign. How, when you think about keyword strategy, what is your best approach to sort of mapping that content to those keywords? You talked about how you would go and look at the SERPs and you'd use tools to do sort of competitor auditing of keywords. What would be your top tip from a keyword mapping strategy point of view to make sure you get the right content mapped to those keywords to get the most visibility and rankings in Google?
Yeah, so again, going back to the search results, like I mentioned previously, so using those kind of individual URLs, seeing what's already ranking for those particular URLs as well. So taking it one by one almost. So saying, okay, this particular service page isn't ranking for anything, or it's ranking for these terms. What do I want to be targeting? What is actually most relevant based on that funnel that I was talking about earlier? Where do I want to be targeting? So typically service pages, you're going to be looking at middle to bottom of the funnel, people who are almost ready to convert, they're looking for a particular service. What are they likely to be searching for? What has search volume? Using kind of keyword research tools, but then also using those keywords and putting them into search results. What's ranking? What type of content is ranking? And then using that to form that overall kind of strategy. It's more, I mean, I've got articles and things that I can share on my Twitter after this as well about how to actually form a keyword mapping file, because it is kind of a whole process, which I could probably do a whole separate talk on. But really just making and pinpointing kind of those particular terms you want to map and target on those individual URLs and the type of content you want to be looking at, making sure it's actually going to rank by putting it in search results as well.
No, absolutely, great answer. And I think that leads really good into a question that Brian O'Shea's thrown in there as well, is when we talk about, obviously we've done the mapping, we've got the keywords, the content, the page URLs, everything sorted out. What about cannibalization? So when we think about that, obviously you've got, say, multiple pages ranking for the same keyword. Are there some basic options that you would think about to do as part of that process to deal with that? Or I guess, would you just let it roll that there's multiple pages ranking for the same keyword? I'm going to throw in both sides of the fence. I mean, I know where I would go with this, but I'm just going to get your view on thinking about that cannibalization scenario.
Yeah, so when I am seeing content cannibalization, generally, I'm going to say it, and I really hope everyone say it depends. I knew it was going to happen at some point. So the way I focus on it is identifying where that overlap is. Is it necessary to have both pages? Is the first question I ask myself. Are they too similar? If they are too similar, can I implement a 301 redirect? Do we need both of them? If we don't, let's get rid of the least performing one, and using kind of analytics and traffic data to be able to identify that. If we do need both of those pages, but actually the intent of each of those pages is slightly different, then maybe we want to be looking at different terms to target for each of those. And we might be looking at a complete kind of content rewrite for both, or a complete content rewrite for just one of those pages to make sure we're targeting a better intent, rather than just kind of having really similar or duplicate content. I would kind of use a very similar strategy to what I would use for really identifying and understanding kind of that duplicate content issue. Because often if it's too similar and Google can't understand it, then users are probably going to get a bit lost from it as well. So generally, yeah, just identifying if there's a different search intent, different terms we should be targeting, different areas of the funnel that we should be targeting, and then just rewriting either both or one of them, or 301 redirecting if we don't need it.
Perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself, so I'm in total agreement on that one. And just as well, another question from Simon Cox. I mean, I appreciate, Simon, thank you for all of your questions as well. You put a few in today, which is brilliant. And so thank you for taking the time to put them in while Sophie's been presenting. Do you ever think about additional strategies for other search engines outside of Google, or are we just kind of living in that world where Google is 95% of what we do and we just kind of stay there and focus on that? I'm just intrigued if there's anything additional you would do, or is it just that same process, any search engine?
Yes, that's a really great question. I don't know if you can hear the ice cream van, by the way, because that's literally just switched on.
I know it could have been a better time for that. It's the perfect day for an ice cream, guys, and I'm sure there's a lot of people leaving after this to go for an ice cream, and I will be wrapping this in the next couple of minutes for you guys.
That's amazing. Yeah, so anyway, going back to that additional strategies for different search engines. So a lot of agencies, a lot of people will typically focus on Google because, as you say, it takes up 95%-ish of the kind of search landscape and all of that. I'm a huge fan of Bing Webmaster Tools, and I think it's such an underutilized asset for a lot of businesses and in-house freelancers, agencies. People tend to just ignore other search engines, and they really shouldn't, because there are some amazing gems in Bing Webmaster Tools. And really just understanding and pinpointing what people are searching for, because we find it a lot, and I've mentioned PPC a few times, but I work on a lot of integrated strategies. And I find typically when it comes to PPC on Bing, it tends to convert at a much higher rate because search volumes are typically lower because people aren't really using it as much. But generally the quality of the leads is better because it's kind of, again, less people. So I use similar strategies, but I use the information from Bing Webmaster Tools and from a number of other tools that kind of can pinpoint Bing more specifically. And there are obviously other search engines, like DuckDuckGo is obviously a really great one that's been kind of around for a while with all of its privacy and things. Yeah, you can't really see too much of that, unfortunately. I guess that's the whole point of DuckDuckGo, isn't it? But yeah, like I say, if you can really dive into Bing Webmaster Tools primarily, that's where I would go to kind of strategize for other search engines. But most will use similar processes regardless. It's just making sure you're pinpointing where you need to.
No, I couldn't agree more, and I think the guys down at Bing do some great things, which is fantastic. They just need that bit more market share and you know, to step into that, but they certainly do convert very well because they're a very different sort of demographic of audience. I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to ask one more question before I sum this up, which is from Daniela, who said, if we define success in one word for an SEO strategy, what would that be? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Sophie.
Yeah, I like that.
Because that's
what a question, what a question. Related back to those business objectives, the success is completely defined by what you want to achieve by the SEO strategy based on what the business wants to achieve. So you can rank for as many keywords in the world, but if the business objective is to increase sales, then you're not really achieving success. So your success should be always related to those kind of initial keyword of those initial objectives, should I say, that you set in the first stage.
Definitely. So we are out of time. We've gone over by 5 minutes. We've got so much questions, and I've still got 8 questions sat in the Q&A box that we haven't got around to yet. So we will get those answers to you guys and make sure that we can give you some feedback on those questions, because we always like to do that. It's a massive thank you to you guys for attending on one of the hottest days of the year again, and we've got coming for the next few days as well. So I really do appreciate that you guys are staying on wherever you are in the UK, or obviously if it's the morning in the US, and you're just warming up to the day. We're in a bit of a heat wave over this side of the world. A big thanks to Sophie at Absolute Digital for taking the time to come and do this with us. So thank you very, very much for that.
Yeah, no worries at all. It's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed listening to it as well. Feel free to reach out to us guys down at Deepcrawl if you want any sort of demo of the technology. So if we briefly mentioned it within the deck and showed you a screenshot of what we do with the platform. So if you'd like a demo or a consultation, please do let us know. Remember that to download one of our free ebooks as well, with the one being up on the screen for about the last sort of 10 minutes while we've been doing the Q&A side of the process. We've got a lot of ebooks and stuff that are on the website that can help you with the SEO side of things. And as I mentioned, there will be a full write-up available on the DC blog probably early next week for you guys to download, listen back to this, take on board the slides, and obviously, you know, read our write-up on everything that's happened on the building a really good SEO strategy. Please, please, please do fill in the survey at the end. We do appreciate your feedback, and would love to know what you think about what we've done today and anything you'd like to see in the future for sure. Our next webinar will be on the 8th of September, which is around multi-site SEO strategies, which I'm sure will be another great one to get your teeth into off the back of this one in some respects, how to build a strategy and how to build a multi-site strategy. So we're trying to group these things together. My name is Jon Myers of Ascending Media. All I can say is thank you so much for listening to us today, and a massive thank you again to Sophie Brannon of Absolute Digital. This was Deepcrawl's webinar today for you guys. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.